product. There's not going to be support for it much longer. You ought to really be taking a look at this. This is a digital autopilot. Century 4, same scenario. So, Mike?
Yeah, I'm mobile. I might throw this too. I get all excited. I have some sign. If you are interested in autopilot and want me to get in touch with you or whatever, just give me your name and email address and everything. I promise not to spam you or bug you or anything. I just want to find out who's interested. I'll pass a few of them around. Put one in each section or one in each table. Yes. We're Genesys Aero Systems. If you are not familiar, although we've been Genesys now for 4.5, almost 5 years, we're actually legally still STEC Corporation. We're based in Mineral Wells, Texas. We were formed 4.5 years ago when 4 of our managers literally put their wallets together and bought us out of Cabo. We're the combination of STEC Corporation and Chelton Flight Systems. I think those are 2 pretty common names. And we still make displays and autopilots. We make autopilots, the STEC fixed wing autopilots, and the Helisas autopilot for Part 27 helicopters. The EFIS system that we make is the latest iteration of the Chelton Flight System displays, but when we reworked it 7 or 8 years ago, we went into a new market, and it's all what they call DO 178 level A software. It can be used in Part 25 aircraft, Part 29 helicopters. And we do a lot of special missions and government work, that kind of thing. It's not really an aftermarket product, or the newest version is not an aftermarket product. But STEC autopilots and Helisas systems are flying everywhere. In fact, this is our 40th year, and we've shipped in that time over 40,000 autopilots. So when it comes to general aviation, there's nobody that knows autopilots the way we know autopilots. Yes, Dave?
I put an S-Tech 50 in my twin Comanche back in '89. It's never been touched, still works great.
Autopilots are put in to last a long time. And I'll get into some of that as I talk about our 3100. A little bit different. A couple of seminars ago, I was asked to include a few tips and best practices and things like that. So I went to Chad Howard, who is our flight test engineer, and I said, give me just a couple of tips that wrong. So I decided to include that. The first one he said, and this I know applies to art and probably many other autopilots, is set the heading bug first. Most autopilots, and certainly the ones that are used in an Aerostar, you need both course and heading to compute intercepts. So it also might save a surprise if you get into heading mode and you start going this way you didn't want to. So. Second of all, watch your airspeed. We don't have auto throttles yet, so it's always good to pay attention to that, especially on approach. Stabilized approaches are just as important when you're flying them on with an autopilot engaged as when you're flying them manually. Chad also says if you can, keep your speed up a little bit on an approach. Autopilots respond a little better when there's more airflow over control surfaces. They don't have to deflect quite so far, so response is a little bit quicker. You know, nothing crazy, but keep your speed up. And remember, and this is important not only for autopilots, but for a lot of sophisticated electronics that are in aircraft, remember to fly the airplane. There's kind of a big temptation now for, I'll say managing a flight, but maybe a little beyond that, not really paying attention to everything that's going on or could be going on or might be going wrong. So always make sure that you are in control and not just the airplane flying itself. And the last thing, and this is a question or a comment that I put up there because I'll stand at Sun and Fun, Oshkosh, and I'll have a bunch of owners like yourselves come in and say, well, I have autopilot and it's going like this or it's going like that or, whatever, as they're all apt to do from time to time. So we go through and there's some common things that are common to all autopilots, and we'll go through those, and then I'll ask the question, what does it do on the ground? they'll say, well, I don't know. And I'll say, well, that's interesting because I know our POH, and I assume most of the others, have a section in the POH that says prior to flight, if you intend to use the autopilot, you have to go through this checkout procedure that has to do with overrides and things like that. So it's important that you check your autopilot on the ground. It's also important because if you go through this check every time you fly, if you get up there and you start doing something and it's not the same as the last time, you know something's wrong. And it's especially important when you're talking to your avionics technician because you can tell them what your normal procedure is. And now all of a sudden you did this and something wasn't right. So find out what it does on the ground all the time. It's a good little tip. So what's new? Our 3100 autopilot, it's actually about a year old. We announced it in 2017 at Oshkosh. We started shipping in the first aircraft in April of this year. It's quite a departure for STEC in a lot of ways. Even though we have 12 or 13 different autopilot systems now, a few more. It is, well, it's a purely digital system. You wouldn't make one any other way right now. It's actually derived from part of a new family of autopilots we have, and the first one was a Part 25 autopilot that we have flying in a program with Airbus and one with Pilatus. It's different than most of our other autopilots because it's attitude-based. It has its own built-in attitude sensor. Most of our traditional or analog autopilots use the turn coordinator and pressure sensors, etc., for pitch and roll references. There are some other differences that we'll get into. The other good thing about it is it can interface to just about any kind of aircraft. It'll work with G500 aircraft, Aspen equipped aircraft. It'll work with just about any analog aircraft as well. As I said, it's an attitude autopilot. It has a built-in MEMS sensor, so it doesn't require any external EFIS or ADAHAR system. As you would expect, it has a straight level button. It offers envelope protection, both in pitch and roll, to avoid overspeed, underspeed, and overbank. One of the unique things about this system is that we use, or I should say reuse, our existing servos. When we were doing our research on developing this product, we asked, what should it do, what does it look like, and everything. And what we learned is we didn't have to change our servos. And as you said, our servos last for years and years. But one of the first indications of an aging servo, and if anyone has worked with that, is a high startup voltage. As the servos age, it takes larger and larger voltage to get them to turn. This usually leads to like a lag in autopilot performance, and you get this stuff or that stuff as previously described. So what we did is we drive them differently. Instead of using a small voltage that slowly ramps up to drive the servo, we use pulses of full aircraft voltage. And that virtually eliminates that startup voltage problem. We've shipped 40,000 autopilot systems, which is probably somewhere in the area of 80 to 100,000 servos. Our repair station in Texas, our servo repair guy goes home on weekends. He's not totally overwhelmed. And with this technique, we've eliminated about, we figure, 90% of the failure modes for our servos. So autopilots go in, and they go in for a long time. Anybody here that has one knows that it's probably the autopilot you're flying may be the one that came in the aircraft. So they're meant to last a long time. And our autopilots, specifically our servos, do. The other big difference in this system is, and if anyone here is familiar with our other systems, you would buy the autopilot and then buy a pitch trim system, you would buy a pre-selector, a flight director interface, other accessory systems, if you will, to make the system as you need it. Well, that was done back 40 years ago to keep the autopilot as low cost as possible. But now times have changed, and most of those features are actually required by most autopilot buyers, So everything is built into the system. The only option is the yaw axis, and in that case, it would just be the yaw servo and mount. The controller and everything for yaw is built into this. And as with all our kits, everything is included in the kit. So if you go to your avionics shop and you're going to buy an S-Tech autopilot, it comes complete with every nut, bolt, switch, washer, and the servos, etc., that you'll need for the installation. As I said, it has a built-in AHARS, so there is no need to connect it to an external ADAHARS or EFA system. It works perfectly well in an aircraft with analog gauges as it does with a G600. As I said, all of the functionality is built into the controller. The autopilot function, the flight director function, and the yaw damper. Incidentally, not all of our 3100 STCs have yaw damper capability. For example, like 210s and 92s and PA32s. I think over 40 years we've sold about 4 of those, so it really wasn't worth doing. But all of the larger aircraft, certainly an aircraft like the Aerostar, would be available both in 2-axis and 3-axis systems. Has all the roll functionality that you would expect, heading, nav, and approach. It connects. There's no separate interface required for GPSS. It can wire directly to whatever, I'll say, modern navigator you have that outputs that signal. Pitch functions, again, they're all pretty standard. We've added an indicated airspeed mode. So now you can either select climbing out at 900 feet per minute, or you can climb out at whatever airspeed you care to. It also has pre-selector functionality built in. So in other words, you can take off, you can set a climb at an indicated airspeed, and also put in a target altitude, and it will automatically transition from one mode to another. It has a level button. The level button is active anytime the autopilot master is turned on. So the system has to be powered up, obviously, but you don't have to be in any kind of autopilot mode. If you're flying along and the system is turned on, you press that level button, the autopilot turns on and brings you back to straight and level. It's just that simple. Envelope protection is a little different. That works when the autopilot is engaged, and that will prevent you, say, if you are climbing at whatever indicated airspeed you select. If you recall, I said our autopilots don't have auto throttles. If you're not paying attention to the gas, it's going to start to bleed off. And first, it's going to beep at you and give you all kinds of warnings. But if you let that go, eventually it's going to pull the nose down. It won't overbank when it's in operation. And the same thing with overspeed. If you start to come down a little too much, it's going to start to level you out before it gets into an overspeed condition.
Is that envelope customizable? In other words, can the user customize that envelope, or is that free?
No, that is set during our STC flights based on the specific aircraft performance. So that's kind of baked in.
There's some autopilot installations have envelope protection that is in the background, much like the level situation, where they'll actually push on the yoke if you're manually flying and try to do something you shouldn't do.
We could do that.
I thought some did, but maybe
Yeah,
so not right now. They do not do that.
Yeah, there are some autopilots that do that. Ours do not.
Okay.
And they don't do that for a purpose. We figure that if you're in control of the aircraft,
I prefer that. I actually thought this one does that.
we could, and Garmin offers that on their autopilot.
Right.
And
That's why I asked.
yeah, well, we actually debated that prior to them even announcing it, and we decided that you're flying the aircraft. If it's in a steep bank, it's there for a reason. So
That's better.
if you don't want to be there, all you have to do is press that level button, and you're
If you have a runaway trim, will the level button bring you back to straight and level?
Yes, if you'd have to like say pull the trim circuit breaker. Okay, then the trim would be disabled if you press level, because the pitch and roll servos are independent from the trim servo. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you're under speed, is there any kind of warning that you get for under speed?
Yes, yeah, you'll get a headset, an audible warning.
What kind of a warning, a beep? Or
Yeah,
something?
I'm not sure. It's a beep. It might say overspeed.
Because in my experience, something like half of our accidents end in an underspeed situation that drives them into the ground.
Mhm.
So I mean, we need, and there are some people like the sailplanes that have audible airspeed indications. They beep depending on airspeed. So the slower you get, the faster the beep is.
Yeah, I have not heard it, so
Okay.
I'm not sure what it is, but it does give you an audible warning. And if the envelope protection is also enabled if you're just flying a flight director. So it will give you flight director bar indications on what you should do to get out of that situation. The system is a little bit simpler than our other systems. There's basically, in a basic system, there would be three main pieces: the controller, which is the mode selection, mode enunciation, and all the computer controls for the whole system, and the servos. In the case of the Aerostar, we will use the existing trim actuator, so there's no need to install that fourth servo. The other unit that's there, the air data computer, is supplied for analog aircraft because we do need digital air data, and that comes as part of the system if it is an analog equipped aircraft. What have we done? The first STC we got was for the Cessna 210. At the same time, Bonanza, the 35, 36 Bonanzas, 182s. The Cessna Cardinal is certified. The PA-32. Earlier this month, the Cessna 300 twins, should be the 335 on there as well. Last week, we got issued the STC for PA-46. Malibu Mirage, even including the jet props, are included in that. All the Cessna 400s were done. And in fact, there's now well over 100 aircraft models that are certified to use this autopilot. We're working on a variety more. We have a King Air B100 in our hangar now. We're going to be working on Barons, Moonies. Like I said, there's over 100 aircraft that are now certified. This is on an autopilot that we announced just a little over a year ago. So our certification group is busy. And I would really like to see an autopilot in this aircraft. I know I've been talking to Ken about it for a long time. And basically, the way that the program works is this. I think we've all had enough aviation experience to know, and I know I've heard this sentence, if you could make one of fill in the blank for this aircraft, fill in that blank, you'd have them lined up. And there's many companies that have gone ahead and done that, only the line turned out to be substantially shorter than they had initially suspected. So, and rightly so, our management team has told us to pursue new STC, at least now in the new stages of the project. We need to get 15 pre-orders, and then we'll put it on the STC list. We actually did that with the Cardinal owners group, which initially would be a little bit on the small side for our autopilot, but we talked to them, got together, and we actually got 20 orders from Cardinals, so they went on the list. To encourage pre-orders, and by pre-order, what I mean is you would go to your avionics shop and say, I want to put 3100 in my Aerostar. Your shop would send us a purchase order. We don't know the part number for that autopilot yet because we haven't completed the STC, but he would send us a purchase order. We put that order in a file, and that order is fully cancelable up until we start the STC. So when we get 15 of these pre-orders, everybody will be notified that we're getting ready to start it. You have up until that time to pull the order back if you sell the aircraft, change your mind, whatever. By the way, we've had 350 orders for this autopilot, most of which have been pre-orders. We've only had like 5 cancellations, so it doesn't really happen too often. But at that time, the order becomes firm because we're going to be doing our STC project based on those 15 orders. So it takes us, after that time, about 3 to 4 months to complete the STC, another month to get what's called parts manufacturing authorization from the FAA. So the whole process from when we start the STC to when we start shipping kits is going to be somewhere in the 4 to 5 month process. Right now, based on our current certification load, new STC programs are being scheduled for next March or early April. So add 4 to 5 months to that. You're probably talking maybe end of summer or about this time next year that we would be shipping kits. I have some copies of that program back on my back there if you want to take a look at a written version of it. The standard system, 2-axis is $19,995, 3-axis is $24,995. Like I said, that is soup to nuts, everything that would be required to install the system in your aircraft. And as far as familiarity, any avionics shop that is familiar with installing S-Tech autopilots can install a 3100. There is really no mechanical difference. Obviously, the wiring is a little different, but it's standard. I'll say the standard avionics art can install that. If you already have an S-Tech autopilot, you could upgrade to the 3100 for as little as $99.95. Again, we reuse the existing servo installation, so it could be a lot less in equipment costs, a lot less in installation time. If, as I said, if you place a pre-order with us for the system, you'll get an extended 3-year warranty on the new system. And if you already have an S-Tech autopilot installed, we'll put a 2-year warranty on any installed servos. So you get, it's like, and it doesn't matter if you wanted to change your system 50 that's been in since 1989, we would warranty those servos for 2 years. So why the 3100? It is the best Part 23 autopilot you can buy today. There is none better. And I will match that up against any autopilot that you can buy. I'll show that we can perform better, we're priced better. Unmatched interface options. Unlike a lot of other autopilots, there's no special equipment required. We can work everything from a G600 to most analog instruments. I'm sure there's a few HSIs out there that are a little bit unworkable. 40 years and 40,000 autopilots of experience and a dealer network that's been with us for all 40 of those years. So you'll get unmatched service from both S-Tech and our dealer network. Oop, that must be it. Oh, there we go. 3100, it can replace, we have STCs in the Aerostar now, so we're familiar with the airframe. We know how to install an autopilot in it, and I would be very happy to install an autopilot in any Aerostar that's in this room.
Question, shop rate, put it in, estimate shop rate.
A new system is, the installation time, we estimate for a new system would be very similar to our 55X with an auto trim, because the controller is mounted in the same place, the servos are mounted in the same place. That would be somewhere in the 95 to 105 hour range. Again, you need to talk to a shop because it's somewhat dependent on your panel and other equipment that you have, and that kind of thing. Upgrades from the 55X to the 3100 have been taking about 40 hours, plus or minus a little bit, again, depending a little bit on the airframe and what's in the panel. So you can see if you're upgrading, you can literally, cut the cost in half or even more.
That control panel would go in the pedestal where we have a Century 4 right now, or any of the other controllers?
No,
it has to go on the
Right, we
So
are,
that- it's
we are working on a remote enunciator that would make pedestal mounts possible, but right now it's a radio rack. As I said, oh, yes, sir.
Yeah, so I've got he's relatively gotten a new shingle for his shop, but he's been working through a group for years and years and years, and it's in kind of a competitive market. Can you get somebody authorized to put in an S-Tech autopilot in that instance? Like in Wichita, Kansas?
Our shops have to be a licensed 145 repair station.
He is,
Okay.
he is a licensed. Bevan Ray Bell is there, and he's been very uncomfortable about allowing new business. Yingling is there. And,
I don't cover that area, so I would have to defer that to that area regional manager. I personally am always looking for new avionics shops. Businesses are always starting up and growing. Our basic requirement, like I said, it has to be a 145 repair station with limited airframe, limited radio, and limited instrument certifications.
and he qualifies for that.
Okay, he very well could be, but again, that was, we have well, North America divided up into 3 areas. I cover kind of the eastern third of the country, and as far as shop management and dealer management, that's up to the individual regional manager. Anything else? Stop back and see me if you had a chance. Please sign up on the sign-up sheet. And like I said, I promise not to pester. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Let's take a quick break, get something to drink, and